570th meeting of the Laurel Planning Commission is called to order. Dean, you call the roll, please.
Councilman Swaff.
I'm so unaccustomed to you calling my name on roll call. Here.
Mr. Welford.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Kish.
Here.
Mrs. Bettman.
Here.
Mrs. Highland.
Here.
Chairman Williford.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Has everyone read the minutes?
Yes.
Are there any questions regarding the minutes? Any additions, deletions, changes? No. Entertain a motion for approval of the minutes, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes from the November 13th, 2012 meeting.
I second that.
Second.
Mrs. Bettman.
Yes.
Mr. Kish.
Yes.
Mr. Welford.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Chairman Williford.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 3, special exception allocation number 831 531 Main Street, filed by Main Street Sports Bar and Grill for recommendation to the Board of Appeals. Who has that? Okay.
The Main Street Bar and Grill would like to have bands play in their facility, and the property is zoned Commercial Village, and in the Commercial Village zone, a special exception is required for the live performance of bands or other performing groups with dancing. And so it's before you for a recommendation to the Board of Appeals. Staff is recommending approval based upon the 5 criteria for granting a special exception. First, it will be in harmony with the master plan. The Commercial Village was set up as a zone for mixing the land uses, a place for people to work, to shop, and also to be entertained. And so it will meet the first criteria. Second, it will not adversely affect the health, safety, or welfare of the surrounding area. First, there's a city noise ordinance to provide a check on the noise. Second, the police department sent back an email stating that they did not object to the submitted special exception. Third, the applicant has submitted a setup for where the performances would take place, and it's inside. And fourth, there will be no external speakers. Third, the proposed use will not be detrimental for other impacts such as odors, glare. The applicant has addressed some other possible impacts. For safety, the entrances are lit. For trash pickup, refuse has been picked up at this location for 13 years. There is available parking on Main Street and a private lot behind the business. Fourth, it will not overburden existing public services or facilities. Various governmental agencies were sent the special exception application, and there was no objection from the government agencies that responded. Fifth, the proposed use meets the specific standards for the particular use. The applicant has responded to the specific criteria underneath entertainment uses that was included in your information packet. Staff would like to note the applicant acknowledged that non-conformance with the provisions of the special exception would be grounds for review by the city staff for a recommendation for a hearing at the Board of Appeals for revocation. In conclusion, staff recommends the Planning Commission send this forward with a favorable recommendation with the following conditions. First, no external speakers are permitted. Second, live performance by a band or other performing group with dancing is permitted as follows: Sunday through Thursday, 5 to midnight, Friday and Saturday, 4 to midnight. Third, all regulations as set forth in the City of Laurel Noise Ordinance must be met, followed at all times. May I answer any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes. I know that the Main Street Sports Bar had live music and dancing for years and years and years. Where did it come in that they lost that permission to have that? When did that happen?
Can I jump in, please? From the relics corner. Yeah, as you well know, a bar/tavern has existed here for 50, 60 years. in various venues, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, it was common, and I lived next door when the city passed laws regarding this. Every use sort of became non-conforming, but this particular applicant and other applicants that you will see applied to the Board of License Commissioners of Prince George's County to have extended hours, and that puts them over the edge, so to speak, where they need the process you're going through for this particular property is actually a protection for them, so that way that they're legitimized and they're also controlled by restrictions. But it was the city that defined entertainment. I lose track of time. I'm going to say about 6 or 7 years ago, and that made it non-conforming. But the trigger was when these folks are applying for licenses to get an entertainment license, and as you well know, the city of Laurel has its own zoning regulations, and the entertainment license that would be issued by the Board of License Commissioners of Prince George's County is not valid in the city until the city says so. So I hope that answers your question.
One other question is, what sets it at midnight? Why not, what is their closing time? Isn't their closing time more like 2 a.m.?
Yes, the city solicitor had made that as a recommendation, which the planning department supports the recommendation from the city attorney. The applicant, though, she would like to address that to the planning commission and talk about that limit.
Okay.
We'll hear from the applicant, and I have a question also. Describe the noise ordinance to me. At what decibel is it an offense to the people in the adjacent properties, such that it generates a call to the law enforcement people and they have to come and say, turn the volume down or whatever?
Although there's a decibel level in there, if it can be heard from the property line, then it's too loud.
That means beyond their property line?
Yes.
Okay, from the property line. Okay. We're not fighting, I just want some clarification of because we had a discussion about something related to noise abatement last meeting. And I'm wondering, where's the cutoff when something that's fine for the people inside becomes annoying to the folks outside beyond the property line? And then that generates a phone call. And then you've created a problem for the owner if there isn't some reasonable.
Yes. There is an hour of the day at 10 o'clock. It changes. The decibel level changes.
10 in the morning?
No, 10 o'clock at night.
Okay.
The volume has to go down.
Okay.
And that is through until 7 o'clock the next morning.
Okay.
So there are 2 decibel levels before 10 and after 10.
And would an owner of an establishment with live music and, what do you call them, the speakers?
External speakers?
No, not external speakers. The thing that gives it the power.
Amplifier.
Amplifier. Thank you. I'm square. Would an owner know when the amplifier is suddenly too loud so that they could turn it down and avoid phone calls from offended neighbors? I'm saying this past Friday I was attending an event. Our table was adjacent to the speakers. It was horrendous, okay? That same kind of noise spills outside all the time in cars and everything. So when does the owner know that they are triggering phone calls complaining of noise?
I'm not a noise or acoustical expert, but there are, we use the word decibels and stuff because that's why our ordinance also has the clause about can be heard from the property line. But there was a time when any violation was measured by decibels, and it became difficult because noise level meters at the time needed to be, they weren't cheap and they needed to be calibrated. And there was a lot of legal action based on the fact whether it was calibrated correctly or not. But to answer, hopefully help to answer your question, if a owner of a property that had noise such as this wanted to be proactive, then he or she would buy a noise level meter, and at least, because there's a certain decibel level, I want to say it's 70?
65.
65, excuse me. That could be their barometer. if they wanted to, monitor themselves.
But the police department does have, as well as our department does have a decibel
That's like your
meter.
breathalyzer. Is it something that's standard that we know we're in compliance when we've got
Well,
our gauge and their gauge?
There were 2 meters bought for this purpose. Our department has one, the code enforcement officer, and the police department has one. And if they get a call, they can go out with the meters and determine what the dB is.
My question is not to hassle the owner, it's about understanding the level of noise. Yes, you, please.
My question is separate than
It's okay.
from your question. And I guess the question I had is, it's actually 2 questions. It looks like the applicant was only asking for entertainment on Fridays and Saturdays, but we're recommending for 7 days a week. I'm not sure if something changed within the application. And the second question I had was, typically every now and again I'll go out to a place that plays live music, and when I go to a place like that, I'm specifically going because they play live music and being entertained. So I know that there was a limitation on the time, and I don't know if this is an appropriate form to ask why there was a limitation on the time, if it's just those 2 days that they really wanted, why it would end at midnight, why there was that recommendation, but those are my questions.
Okay. Can we hear from the applicant then, for the answer? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Catherine Wilson, 531 Main Street. Do you want my business or my home?
Either works, I believe.
Okay. But 531 Main Street is my business. I've owned it for 14 years. We've never had issues. The thing is that we have entertainment other times, but it's trivia, it's DJ. But live entertainment usually is one night, either Friday or Saturday night. The thing is, I need to keep live entertainment in order to keep the business. And my recommendation is to put 12 o'clock on my live entertainment will destroy my business. Because when the band stops, the people leave. So I've had an entertainment license through PG County for 14 years. I pay every year. I have the largest liquor license for PG County. It goes till 3 in the morning. We do not do that. We now do 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock. That's when the bands play. Now, the way I pay my bands is based on 25% of the net when they start and when they stop. So what happens, and I'm not young, I'm not that old, but I'm not that young. But in order for as I explain, every time a band comes in order for you to get paid, my bartenders, my waitresses must hear the orders. And if they cannot hear the orders, I don't care if you're Aerosmith. I don't want you playing loud. This is a small facility, and this is where you can now sit there at the bar and have a conversation and hear the band. This is how I run my establishment. I have a very good relationship with the Laurel Police Department. Unfortunately, lately we've been getting calls from before, and it's for noise, and it's from one individual who moved into the neighborhood. What the police department comes, they put their whatever that decibel meter, and they say it's not a problem. And they gave me a report of the calls, and it's only from one individual. That is an entire community, and I get one call. I have the property manager come to me, and he actually will be in the establishment at the time, and he'll come to me and say, it wasn't loud. But I definitely understand noise. I am not trying to be a nuisance, but if you put a 12 o'clock restrainment on me, I pay $12,000 a month in rent. I will not. You can close my doors next month if you put a restraint to 12 o'clock, because during the week is not my busy time. The recession has hurt me. Now, 1 o'clock I don't feel is bad. And the doors are closed, the windows are closed, and there's business going on. The establishment was there before the community was. And all I'm asking is to allow my establishment to conduct business, but I will and I do adhere to the community's rules, and I make sure that there is no problem. But it is not loud, because if it's loud, I don't make money. People don't want to be in there. They leave if they can't have a nice conversation, dance, and things like that. So I am applying, which I have had a liquor license for 14 years, and I've had the entertainment license, which is part of my liquor license. So I hope you would approve this and think of the small businessman that's on Main Street. That Main Street is having a hard time. And if you do that, I will have a real issue.
Excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Before you sit down, please, has there been an exchange between you and staff relative to this midnight? Because that was the question.
No. I was just given the report yesterday and told what the recommendation was, and I explained that I have an issue with that, and I was told this is when I need to speak and explain why.
Okay. Mr. Chair, go ahead, please.
I have a question for staff. Thank you, ma'am. I
Thanks.
didn't want to.
We're good.
So does the approval go to the person or to the property? So if there was another property owner, the approval would convey. Would there be any recourse? So hypothetically, let's say this body agreed to 1 o'clock or extend the hours, and we ran into multiple issues. What would be the city's recourse at that point? You see what I'm asking?
If there was a problem, then planning department could bring back before you spend
And then we'd be okay to change those hours, or would we be in court fighting that one? See where I'm going?
Wouldn't it be a violation of number 3 on the recommendation?
That gets back to the noise ordinance.
So that's not actually changing. So if this body approved this, extending the time to 1 o'clock or whatever we did, and we had, again, this particular business owner, I think we all here in the city have great experience, and many of us have been there. So I'm not so worried about this property owner, but I am worried about future property owners, which may not have the same community care. But I guess we have enough hooks in this that if we got into an issue, we can use number 3 and then deal with it.
If you set your parameters and the parameters aren't met, then I'm obliged by law to bring them back
Okay.
for a revocation hearing.
Okay. So that would give us that recourse again if we had a change in property owner and we had a business owner that maybe just didn't want to be as cooperative. You with me, Mr. Chairman? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
if the property owner, one question I think that Monique asked, which wasn't answered, was that the request was for live entertainment on Friday and Saturday. The staff came back and was granting it all throughout the week. Based on what you said, I guess I'm thinking if we're going to potentially consider extending the time, do you want the Friday, Saturday, or were you?
What I want it open to is when you have a 4th of July on
Oh,
a Tuesday. The thing is
I see.
but also, my liquor license only goes till 2 o'clock, Sunday through Thursday. And we
Right,
would
that
not
was
ever
on.
go that long because you make sure you get your patrons out way before your liquor license is in jeopardy. So, and most of the nights,
Okay.
you know, it's more of the exception to the rule because of those special holidays.
Thank you.
Pertain
Thank
to
you.
this. Is there any other, go
Can I
ahead.
just interject a point of clarification? The word has only been used by the applicant once, just so everybody understands. If this is granted, that does include dancing. That word has not only been used once. I want everyone to shoot, this is a package deal that she's allowed to do that too. It's not a separate thing.
I understand.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
There are other places that dance too.
Yeah.
We're aware of other places that dance. Are there any public comment on this? How do we open? We hit the gavel and say open, or is it just open?
Yeah, open the public hearing.
Okay, it's 7:22, public hearing is open.
Hello,
Say your name and address, please.
name's Fran McCrory, 585 Main Street, apartment
Okay.
345. I live several doors down from this bar. They, I mean, I have tried to ask them about the noise. I've been trying to work with them. Okay, originally, I've lived there about a year and a half. And when I first tried calling them, they originally said, oh, okay, we're going to stop playing music at 11. No, they said they'd close their windows at 11 o'clock. And that would be okay. I didn't know, why are they applying for a permit now if they were okay to play this music in the first place? But anyway, imagine I live a few doors away, and there was a night a couple months ago that I could close my doors, my windows, lock them, lie on my bed with my ears plugged, and I could still hear their music. They're a tiny little establishment in a dense, mixed-use neighborhood, residential and commercial. And they play in this music. I mean, it's windows, and it's just, and I can hear it not just from my property line, but from inside my house. Like I said, with windows closed and locked, and with earplugs on sometimes. And I just wish you could consider I really like you to consider the neighborhood it's in, and then the neighbors. I mean, it is a half residential neighborhood. Every single one of the buildings, the bar itself, has third and fourth floors with residents. And I don't know, that they've been entirely uncooperative. I tried calling them once, and they just hung up on me when I said, can you please turn it down? They hung up on me. They have it's like they have no intention of working with neighbors. And I'm really hearing all this stuff about, it sounds like, I don't know. I'm not a very good speaker. I'd like to please take the neighborhood into consideration, and how loud they are and how uncooperative they are. Thank you.
And thank you. You're not taking an advocacy role for or against. You say the neighborhood and the applicant had testimony of only having one complaint.
Probably me.
Okay. And,
I'm 60 feet away from them. So
Okay.
I remember reading the Laurel City Code, and they say 50 feet away from the property line. I might be their closest neighbor. Maybe that's why their closest neighbor is actually an office, is in a residential unit.
this is going to sound like a funny question. What kind of earplugs do you use? Stay with me. What kind do you use?
Home?
Huh?
Home? Home earplugs.
That's the manufacturer.
That's the manufacturer. What substance is it?
I don't remember.
All right, I'm saying this for a reason. This will get me in trouble at home. But for people who have partners that snore, I'm serious. CVS carries an earplug. It's a very thick substance. Have you tried that? It blocks out almost everything. I don't know that your ears are hypersensitive. I don't know that, and I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to be reasonable.
What was the discussion earlier about the property line?
So if I could, Mr. Chairman,
please.
Jack, Mr. Brock, could you state again what the requirement is?
If it can be heard If it's audible at the property line, then it's too loud.
Okay. So that's the standard.
Tell her to come to the mic if she wants to talk.
That's correct.
So it would appear that if that what the neighbor is saying, then that would have been a violation,
Yes.
if that was, the way it was at the time. So we have adequate coverage, in my way of looking at it, for issues where it's too loud. We have a standard for it's being too loud. Now, whether we enforce, that has to be enforced, but we have a standard.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Brook.
This is back to why we started the questioning. What is the noise requirement? What's the good for the community? What's the good for the city?
So Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I could.
You can.
I would like to propose to my colleagues that we consider extending the staff's restrictions to include 1 o'clock. So to change the time in the staff recommendation to 1 o'clock, with the understanding that the city will take all precaution, or all investigations and deal with when any establishment in our city is outside of the sound ordinances. I believe, I appreciate where the neighbor's coming from, but I believe we have, adequate protection in the ordinance. We are talking about Main Street. I understand it is Main Street is a mixed area, but we're also, as a community, talking about an arts district and, trying to be able to preserve, and again, in a thoughtful way, how we move these businesses forward and have them be able to generate the revenue to be able to provide these kind of amenities in our cities. So I think I appreciate where the neighbor's coming from, but I believe we have. Now, I'm not making a motion, I'm just suggesting we consider it that way. So I'll let you open up the rest of the public hearing, but that's where my head is right now.
Someone's got their hand up, please come to the mic.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Councilman Smalls and the rest of the commission. My name is H. Edward Ricks, and I live at 603 Laurel Avenue. I am particularly familiar with this establishment. I go there quite often. Sports is one of my things that I like a lot. The bands, I could pretty much let it go. I wouldn't need that one way or another, but I've been there when the bands have played. I'd like to submit to you, and I agree with Mr. Wilson, I think you ought to permit the owner to go to 1 o'clock. I think it's extremely important because of the things that we're trying to do on Main Street, the valuable part that we want to see the people down there succeed, and I think the more we cut them back and create problems, then they'll be gone. That building has been there since the 1800s. It was a trolley car stop from Washington, D.C. Now, in those days, it wasn't a bar, but as a child, my father used to take me in there. And so if that equates to anything in age, then I think you know how long it's been there.
You're old as the hills, but that's all right.
Dirt.
What I'm going to also suggest that you do, and for the young woman here who's being violated in her particular mind, I think that we've got to reverse the process. If she has complained and the police department has gone there with their meter and it has not registered in violation of the code, maybe the next time it happens, she has to call them to go to her apartment and measure it up there to see what the decibels are. That if they've got a problem at that level, then she has a recourse. If not, it's what it is. But I would encourage you all to allow this business to prosper. We do not need any more problems on Main Street, and I think it's a wise decision in my mind that we permit this business to flourish. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You understand that common sense is rare.
I try to use it every day.
Okay, thank you. We've heard discussion from the floor and from the panel. Would you like to have further discussion among? Go ahead, please.
Just answering your question, in the city's code, section 9.85, it specifically talks about the noise level, and the noise disturbance violations and the decibel levels are specific as to daytime and nighttime hours. So it'd be easy for the city and the fire and the police to enforce.
The issue here that we're talking about now is the extending the hours.
Right.
correct?
So
I was just answering your earlier
Appreciate that.
question.
Mr. Chairman, only thing I could add, and this, I have no idea, I'm not a sound scientist, but I did have one time where sound was being conducted, through the ground, through that kind of thing, and then up into a building. I guess such things could happen where it could pass at the property line, and again, still be loud in someone's adjacent property. So again, I don't know, but I think Mr. Ricks makes a point that if we do a test somewhere near the homeowner's place and the sound decibels are higher, then we'll have to figure out how to mitigate it at that point.
I think we can put these matters into the property authorities to get it investigated. But for right now, let's have a discussion relative to what this body wants to do as to the proposal that's before us right now.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, if you're looking for a motion. I'll make a motion to accept, to extend the hours to accept the staff input and extend the hours to 1 o'clock, 7 days a week.
And I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. Any
Mr.
others?
Wilson?
Questions?
Vote aye.
Please go.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Mr. Walford?
Yes.
Mrs. Bettman?
Yes.
Chairman Williford?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Nice warm up. I would like to talk to you some other time about the earplugs for one thing, and we'll do some other things to get this in the proper channels for resolution, but we certainly heard you. We certainly heard you. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 4, final record plat, Laurel Gardens, Park Avenue, Philip Powers Drive, and Nichols Drive, followed by Laurel Gardens Incorporated Care. Michael Anderson.
Good evening. The applicant, Laurel Gardens, is seeking approval for a record plat, a consolidation that consists of 3 record plats. They want to consolidate all the plats into one for the redevelopment of the multifamily development apartments that they plan to do. All of the lots have the same owner. It's zone R18, which is medium density multifamily. The lots to be consolidated are located at the Laurel Gardens development along Park Avenue, Philip Powers Drive, and Nichols Drive. It is recommended that the Planning Commission approve the plat of consolidation record plat for the new Laurel Gardens development as presented.
Anyone have questions?
Now, this seems to be a pretty
This has
pro
been
forma
before the
thing.
board before, it's before the commission before. I have people here, but I don't know which they're voting on or speaking for.
This is 4 through 7. Oh.
I have one name. I have Mr. DePietro as a spokesperson.
Just on this one. I don't think we need him to speak on this one.
No. That's about, okay. He's doing, that's down here.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Bob DePietro, 502 Gorman Avenue, Laurel, Maryland, on behalf of the applicants, Laurel Realty Corporation and Legend Builders. We've been here a couple times as well as with the city council. This is an overlay zone in which we're taking an existing apartment development of 79 units down and replacing it with 114 units. Of which one of those units will serve as a resident office for the project. We have, at this point in time, read the staff report and the recommendations of the staff as found on their staff report. We
I'm sorry, are you talking about the overlay? Do you want us to first deal with, we were on the consolidation one. Do you want us to go ahead with a motion if we're ready on that?
That's fine.
Is that what you were addressing? You were addressing the overlay, correct?
I was actually addressing the entire project and then stepping aside if somebody
Okay.
else wishes to speak.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, then
problem.
however you want. Okay.
Go give us the whole story and then we'll.
The project staff report, which we have in front of us, which I believe is agenda item number 8, 4 is the consolidation. We have no objections to the staff report nor the recommendations. We request no changes and/or deletions or additions. We are here tonight to answer any questions that the commission may have or respond to any questions that the public may raise. Thank you.
Okay. Isn't this enough? Isn't that the same article, that same
He's
person?
9 and 8. So we can, I think you got somebody from 4. Where's your other?
It was 4, 8, and 12, that's DePietro. I don't have anything else.
Mr.
That's three,
DePietro, that's it?
three.
Okay.
That's it. Nothing else.
We can ask if there's anybody here to speak on it.
Does anyone else want to speak on this matter?
Being broken up into more than one?
We're trying to put it together as a package now because it's been before the body before, and we're trying to take it home.
Is there going to be a secondary discussion?
After this meeting, not that I'm aware of,
Okay, then I want to speak.
please. You won't?
No, I said I want.
Please come forward. I think I would.
Last week, the...
Say your name for address for the record, please.
Andrew Jackson, 903 Philip Powers Drive. Mr. DePietro said that he was ready to answer any question from the public. Last week, my next-door neighbor at 904, Mark, asked about 20 questions to Mayor Moe, and Mayor Moe said that the questions would all be duly noted and put into the official record. And I was wondering, if he was prepared to answer the 20 questions that were in the official record. That's the first thing. Let me tell you because I haven't seen you all before, but I must have slept through that meeting. But I've been to every meeting that has been involved here, and I just want to tell you from our point of view, and I'm not trying to get too wordy, but I was expecting to see the mayor and that people. But I mean, today I saw the grounds people out there drilling holes in the ground, trying to do water tests. And under the plan, there is approximately 8 slots for low-income housing and 8 for what's called work housing. Now that's 16 slots available to us under that low-income plan. And we have 120 units with 10, about approximately 14 to 16 under the workforce and under the low-income housing. And like I said, on top of I rented November a year ago. I did not know that this project was planned. Okay, so I am adversely impacted from this. April 1st, we get a note on our front door, which was 6 months after I moved in, that this is all falling down on our head. And Mr. DePietro, Michael Anderson, Candy Anderson are fairly influential and politically backed, and I have no problem with that. But I mean, we are majorly financially disadvantaged, myself, from having moved in here, and now, with a very short period of time, I am unable to find equivalent, housing, and on my house, I pay $950. I pay my own water bill, I pay my own gas bill, and I pay my own electric. And I've heard numerous testimony that that was not the case. Well, I do. So half the units, we pay our own thing. I have a view from the park, from my front door and back door, and there's no talk about compensation whatsoever to assist us. And there's even a federal law if you're over 65, which I'm not, so I don't apply that. But I mean, I want you to think about the people that are being displaced. I'm not even sure how many are still left at the house. I mean, and my unit is in perfect shape. I have, I think, 8 units connected in my building. Everyone is occupied and everyone's in perfect condition. And my unit has been hit by both an earthquake and 2 tornadoes, and the roof tiles didn't even come up. So, I mean, has anybody actually thought about the big picture here of the displaced people, even though my unit is not slated? And I understand that, you know, progress has to go on. But like I said, I would have never moved in there a year ago. And like I said, after I moved in, April, I get notice that this is all coming down on us. So I want you to take this into consideration. And I also like to use the word rocket docket. I have never seen legislation passed so quickly. You know,
Sir, can you narrow it down to some specific? We've heard most of this presentation before. It may not have been out of your mouth, but it's like a repeat. Everybody up here has heard this before.
And you've acted on anything that any of this has said?
We're following the rules is what we're doing, and we're looking out for the good of the city of Laurel. That's what our focus is. You are going to be encumbered by this decision?
I'm not encumbered?
Okay. I said you're going to be, yes.
And what is my compensation?
Also, and this is not a court here. We're hearing you again. Maybe not you specifically, sir, but we've heard this before. You were even present before.
Then I will end it. I used to read the Washington Post. Now I wrap fish in it. And my favorite columnist was Ann Landers. In one of her columns, she was asked, I've heard there's a thing called the 3 big lies. And what are they? And she said, of course you know the check's in the mail. The second is, I won't get you pregnant. But the third big lie, says Ann Landers, is, I'm here from the government and I'm going to help you. I haven't been helped. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, please. Mr. Nichols?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Philip Nichols. I live at 710 Montgomery Street in Laurel. There have been some unfortunate and incorrect things said. The gentleman who spoke before me is, I understand it from my cousins, not on a lease. He may live there, but he doesn't really live there pursuant to any agreement with my family or its business. When I say unfortunate and incorrect, it's just sad. And I won't waste any of your time. I think the report is a good one. This thing's undergone the microscope that you generally put these projects under. It does a lot of good things. It increases the green space. It provides for stormwater management, which didn't exist before. And I'll stop there. My family has done as much in the public interest as we can. We'd like to stay in business, and this helps us to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to answer a question if
any questions
you want.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. DePietro, do you have any rebuttal?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay.
So we're gonna have to.
We're not.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion on the final record plat to approve the Laurel Gardens, Park Avenue, Philip Powers Drive, and Nichols Drive, filed by Laurel Gardens, Inc., care of Michael Anderson, and the action on resolution number 12-12PC, and separate the two. Recommend approval with the staff report. And then I have questions on the second set of those, so just make the motion on.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
You can keep up with each other, fine.
Okay.
So
It's been moved and seconded.
4 through 7.
Let's get 4 done, and then we'll address 8.
So 4 and 7 is what I'm putting on the table.
You call the roll, Ms. Green, please.
Mrs. Bettman?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Welford?
Yes.
Mr. Kish,
Yes.
Chairman Williford,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
if I can address now motions, or agenda items 8, which is the revitalization overlay. If I could ask staff to address this one, and what I'd like to get on the record, if I could, is exactly what we're approving in this one. I understood the previous one.
Okay. The applicant, Laurel Gardens Inc., is seeking final overlay approval of revitalization overlay application in accordance with the provisions of Ordinance 1423 to raise existing Laurel Gardens apartments and construct a new development with adequate on-site parking. Currently, there are 79 units there. They're proposing to tear it down and build 114 units, 10 buildings. Out of those units, 36 will be for age-restricted residents 55 and up. The development will be constructed in 3 phases. The site will provide 207 parking spaces, 166 on-site, 41 on-street parking. The applicant also is requesting that the age-restricted apartment buildings permit parking at a 1 space per unit as opposed to 2 spaces per unit. Section 20-13.3 Development Standards for Revitalization Areas of the Land Development Code allows for the modification of parking and loading requirements as well as other conventional development regulations. It is recommended that the City of Laurel Planning Commission approve the final revitalization overlay area application RO4-1-2012 for redevelopment of Laurel Gardens apartments containing 114 multifamily dwelling units and associated surface parking located along Park Avenue, Philip Powers, and Nichols Drive be approved with the following conditions. The required number of off-street parking spaces for age-restricted apartment units, 36 units, will be modified from 2 spaces per apartment unit to 1 space per apartment unit. The applicant is required by the Land Development Code to submit plans to the City Community Design Standards Committee for review to ensure the development project meets design standards before any construction permits are issued. The applicant must conduct an all-way stop evaluation at Montgomery Street and 9th Street after the development is completed and when schools are in session. Applicant will be responsible for any improvement recommended by the evaluation. The site plan must meet city zoning regulations and city affordable housing regulations. The applicant must provide a timetable for completion of any required on-site and off-site improvements, if any, and amendments at time of construction permit application submission. And a covenant is required and must be filed restricting that housing to age 55 and older prior to the issuance of the first use and occupancy permit by the city.
Some questions. Mr.
Questions?
Chairman?
Yes, please.
One question for the staff and one for Mr. DePietro.
Sure.
Recommendation 6. A covenant is required and must be filed. If there's a requirement, why would it be in a recommendation? Or can you just explain why that's part of a recommendation if there's already a requirement?
When the city solicitor reviewed the staff report, he wanted this to be stated in the requirements so they know that it has to be done.
Okay. I know the applicant said they had no issues with it. I just was
Right.
confused as to why a requirement would be in a recommendation. And then the second question, I believe it's inferred, but if I could just ask for the record, the proposal to demolish the existing Laurel Gardens apartment complex, while the phasing is discussed on the building, the demolishing of the buildings is not an all at once. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Each phase has its own demolition.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr.
Anyone else?
That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, please.
if I got some questions for staff. So my understanding, I think from when Mr. Smalls and I first served on the council together for revitalization overlays, was that the deal was the city gets amenities from the developer in exchange, maybe that's not the right legal word, but in exchange of these amenities. So we take the, if you will, the load on the property up to 114, and we get something in back. Could you describe what we get back for for us doing that?
Well, basically, the main amenity that the development will provide is on-street parking. Currently, there's no parking at all.
Off-street parking?
Off-street parking for the development. It's only street parking, and also there will be green space as well as.
So we get a little bit more green space. We get, I think Judge Nichols mentioned some water abatement that we would have gotten that anyhow with any new development, right?
That's true.
The other thing that I wanted to get on the record or try to understand is Laurel's ordinances relative to workforce housing and low-income housing. Can you describe how those will kick in here?
Basically, the city of Laurel, for the affordable housing program regulations, 6% of the housing stock that's newly constructed, 3% of the total stock must be done for moderately priced dwelling units, and then 3% for workforce housing dwelling units.
So how does that convert for this property at 114 units? Approximately how many units? I just want to make sure we got the arithmetic correct.
I didn't really figure that part out, but it'll probably be around.
So about 6%. So we're talking about 6 units, 7 units, 8 units. Mr. DePietro, can you help me here?
You're correct.
So that'd be for workforce housing? Right. And then another, how many for low-income housing, or are those all the same?
They're all the same as this 3 and 3.
3 and 3.
Yeah.
So we have 3 and 3, and then that could be out of the same bucket of the 55 and over. The 55 and over is a different calculation. Some number of these are for 55 and over, correct?
It could be, but it doesn't necessarily.
But some of those folks could be low income as well.
Possible.
All right. So I just want to make sure that we understand as a body. So thank you, Mr. DePietro. Revitalization overlays are meant, it's a give and take. So I just want to make sure we all understand. So we are increasing the density. All properties have to upgrade, right? It's part of the deal. The whole reason for the ROs was to encourage this kind of crazy investment behavior, if you all want to do it. And we the city and the citizens of the city get something back. So in this case, we're getting back potentially fixing a parking issue. We're getting some low income or workforce housing, and we're getting some 55 dedicated for 55 and older.
Correct.
Do I have that approximately right?
Yes.
Mr. DePietro.
Chairman, just for the record, I think it is important to note that under existing development without the overlay, there's allowed 96 units on this amount of property.
So we're going from 96 to 114.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. DePietro. That's all I have, Mr. Thank you, ma'am. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
My head is spinning. You and Fred cooked this up some time ago, huh?
Well, with the professor.
Yes. Okay.
It's exactly for this purpose.
Are there any other questions? No, sir. Go ahead.
I think I want clarity. There's 36 apartment units that are age restricted, and those are the ones where the parking density is lower. Right. But of that 36, that could also include the workforce housing units, potentially another 6 units, right? So then how does that impact the parking density? Because it looks like without those, there's 192 that's required. So if of the 36, there's 6, then they would get a density of 2 spaces per unit. So would that throw off the parking? It looks like it.
If I could, I think the best way to think of this is, so we get, the parking is for age-restricted housing, right? So that's kind of a standard thing. I guess when I get to be that age, I can get rid of my wife. But
that's not funny.
She who must be obeyed is probably listening. But I think so 36 units get the parking deal, whether they're workforce housing or not.
Perfect.
That's my understanding. Let me make sure staff agrees.
Correct.
Okay. It's 2 separate buckets. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion forthcoming?
You
Yes,
want to open
please.
up the public hearing?
My name is Mark Blair. I live on 904 Philip Powers Drive. And I wasn't really going to say anything tonight, but
I'm listening to you all talk up here about, you know, amenities to the city and green space to the new proposed area and things like that. But again, you know, as living on Philip Powers Drive, we're not going to get anything out of this. We're going to have our green space taken away from us. Right now, with the parking the way it is, with the buildings the way it is, we have 7 or 8 cars from the other side parked on our side as it is. I really don't see a whole lot of, you know, the overlay was supposed to help the community. I don't see it helping the community. I see it helping the city of Laurel, and I see it helping the group back here. I don't really see it helping the neighborhood where it is right now. We have sort of asked to have an open communication and questions answered, and we haven't had any questions answered. Again, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but the more I hear, I have to admit my heart's pounding a little bit right now, and I really don't like what I'm hearing. As a citizen of Laurel, I want to be heard. So I'm sorry, but that's all I really have to say tonight. Thank you very much.
I have a question for Mr. Blair.
Sure.
Mr. Blair, if I could just ask you, what is it that that you would like to see there on Philip Powers Drive that would be a benefit to the neighbors across the street there? What could be done to so that you got something back from this project?
We came in with the idea that we're not really asking that they don't do something with across the street. But we went from one size to another size, which is, what, 45 units more, 50 units more? They're talking about a 3-story building across the street from our house. Now, sitting up the way it is right now, you put another story on that, we're looking at the back of somebody's building. We're not looking at a community anymore. I mean, we've really tried to, as the neighborhood, we've tried to express ourselves to, you know, try to work with this in a reasonable manner, in a professional manner. When we were here with the city council the other week, brought some things up, and it was said that we're supposed to keep an open communication. Again, we're not getting any communication back. All we're doing is every time we come here, we hear something else getting passed. Again, I think that as citizens and the community around that building, we need to be heard a little bit more on this, sir. We're talking about parking, we're talking about green space, we're talking about more traffic, we're talking about more everything. We have a nice neighborhood. We don't want it to be exploited in a way so somebody can make some money. I'm sorry, that's the bottom line. This whole thing right now is money and finance. What you're giving to everybody else, you're taking away from us as a neighborhood. And I'm sorry, I have to disagree that this is wrong. I mean, you know, again, we tried the best way we possibly could to bring this over to you as reasonably and as professionally as possible. We've sent letters, we've got names, we've done everything we possibly can. And again, every time we come here, boom, something else gets passed. So again, thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make one comment.
Ask if you can talk, please. Yes.
I came here tonight not planning to talk as well. But you've been in every meeting and you've offered comments, so you have been heard every time you've presented. Now, maybe you feel because you haven't gotten what you want that you're feeling as if you're not heard, and you certainly have that right to. But at our city council meetings, you've been heard. Your issues have been laid out. Your concerns have been laid out. We've asked that your neighbors, and the applicant communicate. You've had opportunity, and I think everyone who has been at any of these meetings attending certainly understands and realizes that the opportunity has been there. I also just, have to address some of the comments that were made earlier about moving this process through quickly. This has gone through every step, every process that any other application, be it an overlay or whatever the case may be, that is prescribed by city law and guidelines. So there's been no fast tracking here of any of this development at all. In fact, the applicant has been required to go, in some cases, above and beyond to make sure that every I has been dotted and every T has been crossed. I really think that you have to understand and realize that while you may not personally see a direct benefit, there is a benefit to the community. The council has looked at it. Our planning department has looked at it. Our city administration has looked at it. If there was anything that was felt that was not going to be beneficial to this community, and this community in my mind is the greater Laurel community, the city, then the project would not be moving forward in the fashion that it is. But it is going through all of the processes that are prescribed by law and guidelines. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, let me just address a couple things. When we passed, when I was on the council and we passed the overlay ordinance, it was to encourage investment. We live in a community that is totally built out, short of annexation, and we have housing stock in various forms, whether it's single family or multifamily, that is aging. We cannot afford to allow our housing stock not to be replenished as investors and marketing conditions allow. I think the council and certainly this planning department is one of the most progressive in the state, and these kind of provisions, I think, I was quite proud of the planning department that brought these forward and to encourage just this kind of investment. Now, I appreciate that there's going to be change here. And I understand, if you lived in this neighborhood, this is there's a lot of change here, and I can appreciate everybody's point of view. But again, looking at it as a citizen now, especially a citizen of Old Town, I see this as a net plus to the community, and I think we went into this with our eyes wide open, and understanding that there will be people displaced, as this gentleman may be, and that the cost of renting here, leasing here, may go up. I appreciate that. I can understand how, as individuals, this will potentially be not the decision you all want. But that's just my way of looking at it. Again, we're asked to sit here as a planning commission, representing the community at large, and I for one appreciate the care that's gone into this. Across the board. I've been watching on the TV and reading the newspapers about this process as it goes through, and I think we're very lucky here in the city that we control this for ourselves. We are not, bound to the county. I think that was through a lot of foresight of people that came way before us, and I think we do everything possible to make this as transparent a process as possible. So I, for one, will hopefully vote in the affirmative for this when we bring it to a motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. As we said as a commission, everyone is impacted. But as the commission, I'm speaking as a body, that we have a greater interest for the city of Laurel. And with what's going on all around us with North Laurel, with Conterra, et cetera, we can allow ourselves to become a whistle-stop town, or we can move progressively, taking into consideration inputs from everybody. Nowhere in the world do you always get what you want. Somebody gains and somebody loses. Life has never been fair, it never will be. But the process, to my understanding, I believe to the commission's understanding, is that the process has been fair. And that's all we can do, is be fair. Fair doesn't mean everybody gets what they want. Not in the world, it doesn't happen. Now, so it feels like we're coming here before an like we're arbiters. No, we're not arbiters. We're here with a vested interest for the city. We're here to see that the procedures are properly followed, and I believe we're ready to have a discussion for making a motion on this project.
Mr.
I'll
Chairman,
entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the City of Laurel Planning Commission approve the final revitalization overlay area application R04-1-2012 for redevelopment of Laurel Gardens Apartments containing 114 multifamily dwelling units and associated surface parking located along Park Avenue, Philip Powers, and Nichols Drive be approved with the following conditions. I think we all know the condition. You want me to?
Staff report.
Cite the number.
Pardon?
Just cite the staff report.
So, in accordance with the staff report.
And you want to do the...
And we have two resolutions.
And include the...
1212 and 1213.
And include the resolution number 12, the final plan of revitalization. No, that's the, to include the resolution.
1213 PC.
1213 PC.
I'll second.
Moved and second. Are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Mr. Walford?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Mrs. Bettman?
Yes.
Chairman Williford?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Where are we now? Final plan of revitalization overlay application R01-1 2012 Town Center Laurel. Who's representing this from staff? Oh, well.
Professor.
Your worst nightmare, Professor. I think you used the word tonight, you've seen this, this is not new, so I'm not going to sit here for 30 minutes and spew data. I'm going to get to the fact that you are at the final process, same one you were just in a minute ago, for revitalization overlay. The mayor and city council have approved the conceptual plan of the overlay. Could you put the town center on the easel? You have seen this before. We've had a number of meetings, obviously. This is not uncomplicated, but I'll try to make it at least simplified. We have a number of conditions, some of which we're just giving you this evening. So I think it's imperative that we discuss them, at least very, very briefly. Keeping in mind that this particular complex is less than half the size of what it replaces. So you have to always keep that in mind in terms of there's no net new space. And the fact that because this is an overlay, the applicant is not proceeding at this time with the residential section, and I'll get into that in just a moment. One of the things that I want to just basically go to is obviously our recommendation is for approval, but we have a number of conditions, some of which we're just unfolding today, so I don't want to overcomplicate this. Number one is the boilerplate that you adopt the staff report, all the findings and all the background information that was submitted to you. Number two, that you acknowledge that the residential phase is a future phase. This particular one, the applicant feels comfortable that it should be started within 48, not 36 months. You'll probably find out that's a lot less than that, but they want to have the freedom to do that. And the reason why, well, this is in the amendment that should be in front of you. Yeah, we got that far.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bruno, can you give us the date of the staff report?
Well, what I'm reading from is called amended staff recommendation and conditions.
What he set
Yeah,
out before.
121112R.
So
I
it's
apologize.
just,
No.
I just did the same thing.
I was looking
I'm trying to
at
make it simple for you.
Sarah sent us. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
So I'm talking about the residential area that would be started in 48 months. And of course, as you well know, since it's not been dealt with only as a bubble, it really follows, the procedures. It'll have to go through all the procedures. It doesn't have any shortcuts or presumptions, and it pays all the surcharges. It pays, there'll be a reassessment of impact. There'll be an adequate public facilities analysis. of the number of units, which right now they're talking about 435. But again, in the scale and the scope of this particular project, it's a void in the project. So what we're really concentrating on is a town center that's predominantly retail, restaurant, and entertainment oriented. There has been progress in number 3. The applicant has been meeting with CMRT over a bus hub change. We are obviously not finished with that process because it is ongoing. Right now I can tell you that some of the discussions are to consolidate the bus hub a few hundred feet north of this and back of the cinema complex, where there's enough room where we're trying to put a row of bus shelters with some period lighting to actually make it look like a bus station. Because the applicant realizes the importance of that they're a relatively small center in between two, and that this complex is estimated, and this is just a ballpark estimation, will employ about 1,500 people, and we cannot overlook the fact that a lot of these people may have no other way to get here but by transit, either by CMRT local or even coming as far as from Virginia, commuting up through the subway system and taking the 87, 89 metro buses to get here. So we have to make sure that that amenity is reinforced with a provision. And again, we as staff has been working with the applicant and with the Department of Public Works. Number 4, again, is a stock recommendation. We haven't changed this. All necessary road approvals from any county agency are done. Prior to the issuance of building permits, Public Works, as usual, will examine a photometric lighting plan and review it. Number 6, which has largely been struck, it was a lot of wording. We tried to make it simple, which basically said there are 2 big areas of improvements off-site here that we're talking about. Number 1, which is my favorite, which is the complete signalization of Laurel Place and Cherry Lane. So it's a full-blown intersection that can really help, and it's also of great consequence, at least to me, because it's directly across the south end of town center, which also happens to be the home of the grocery anchor, which we know publicly as Harris Teeter. So it's a good thing for it to be there. I think it helps a lot in circulation, and I think it pulls traffic away from the Route 1 entrance. But that'll also have other improvements as time goes along. So basically this is saying, the city improvements at Cherry Lane need to be done before the commercial complex, before the first units are occupied, and the State Highway Administration, which basically controls its own right-of-way, should be done before the beginning of the use and occupancy for the residential, or as State Highway deems. I mean, it's their game. At the end of the day, they're sovereign. Number 7 may seem odd to you, but I want to explain why we're doing it. And we're asking the applicant to keep separate records for the expenditures for the Route 1 side of it. The city fought hard to get designations in a number of areas, and one of them was to be designated as one of 7 Maryland BRAC communities. So since the city is using, and I won't go into this, a TIF, tax income and financing, Department of Business and Economic Development considers that the city's contribution can be subject to the city being refunded money expended by the applicant, because they basically have their hand in the fire, so to speak. So we intend to submit whatever the applicant spent in terms of public improvements on Route 1, and the city will ask for reimbursement from the state for that as a BRAC designation. We don't know how much that amount is, but like I said, the money is there right now. They're doing about $10 million a year, and we intend to be on that line. Unfortunately, the improvement has to be finished before you can submit for, let's say we're looking at maybe 2014 or something like that. But again, we're just trying to hold a place card, because you have to submit the receipts that are unique to that particular project. So anyway, that's the explanation of that. Number 8 is largely struck because it's redundant. Number 9, as you see in these smaller drawings, and I do have bigger drawings, the applicant has submitted architectural plans to the majority of the buildings. And I want to make sure that you understand something, is that the community appearance standards in the Unified Land Development Code start at the staff level. You are an appellate body if they're aggrieved by this thing, but the Unified Development Code charges the city administrator for us basically to have architectural review that, of course, we're going to have you participate in, but I mean, we're the first round, so to speak, of that. It doesn't include all the, obviously I was not disappointed by a single thing I saw.
so far in this development, and I don't plan to be. But it didn't include all the facades. Obviously, we're interested in the theater facade. We'll be interested in the apartment facades, et cetera, and eventually in the signs. Number 10 and number 11 is a personal request. Number 10 is retail changes, and there's one thing I can guarantee you that never will change. Retail will change, anchors change, things move through time. We want to make sure that we have at least an understanding with the developer, not a requirement, that they revisit or at least discuss placement of handicap spaces. Classic example, and I'm not faulting anybody, but Longhorn, for example, at the corner of Conti Road, you have the main entrance, and you have all these spaces in front of it, and then you have all the handicap spaces on the side that are further away behind a stone impediment. So those are the kind of things you need to reanalyze through time and try to make corrections to make sure that we be as ADA compliant as possible. But again, the applicant has agreed, and these are not requirements, these are stuff that we want to make sure we have a continued working relationship. Number 11 is really an expansion of that. As you can see, as detailed as their site plans are, they include outbuildings, they include all kinds of things where we don't have the, let's say, the name of restaurant X in there yet. Where we come in as your staff is that we will scrutinize, and these are my favorites, loading dock, dumpster enclosures, things like that. Those are the details that cannot be overlooked because we pay for them in the end. So 11 is just asking you to give us the power to be your eyes, because I don't think you want every time they have a change in this complex to be drugged back in front of you. I'm sure they'd love to see you too, but I mean, this could be it could be 2 years until they do that. So 11 is very helpful to us, and of course you know that we'll report to you any kind of activity we have in that area. Number 12 is just basically this property has 2 linkage points with Federal Realty. We're not asking them to do anything to make sure, because we're working with Federal Realty as well. In the back, as you well know from the McDonald's in the back, there is an easement that does not go away. They're obliged to maintain access, rear access, although I have a number of issues with McDonald's that we intend to pursue about how that property is circulated. But that's not the fault of, that has nothing to do with the applicant here. And also, as well as there is as you see, the parking deck has been torn down. It's called the north deck. It's being reconstructed within an easement area that was previously approved all the way back to Berman Enterprises years ago. So, but that's basically a private thing. Number 13 and number 15, we came to, this was like one of the most complex ones. You probably remember we gave you another copy today. This is a really nice document. It's the tenant manual. And when you're dealing with a developer that has higher standards, you get things like this, as opposed to, they spell it out for you. Now, we're not advocating that you cede control to the developer to do this, but they have standards. They intend to reinforce them. So our discussion with the applicant just this evening was that this document, that you embrace this document, adopt it by reference in these approvals, because this again empowers us as well, because they have the same kind of thoughts we do about dumpster enclosures, about things like that, and landscaping, and they're obviously they're known for their landscaping. The only place where the administration drew the line, which they have agreed to, is that we have to look at the fact that if they ever sold the property, which they're not planning to do, be that as it may, we have to protect ourselves against temporary signs. So we reserve the right to make sure that all city regulations regarding temporary signs stay in place, so we don't have wind puppets and things that flash within 15 seconds, my big bugaboos. So that would remain. But basically, this is a great document. It sets a standard that few have ever followed. So, and I recommend that you, by adoption of this, include it by reference in your findings. Number 14 is, all this basically is saying is that the city and the applicant will coordinate. We're not mandating anything. We're not mandating getting into their, to making sure that we have a way to link in for public safety reasons and crime prevention, and assist them and coordinate with them in their camera system. It is not a mandate for them to do anything, and we know that we'll have that cooperation from them. That goes without saying. Number 15, again, this is where it formally makes reference to the applicant's tenants manual. when it comes to everything, because they don't miss a trick. Because like I said, I've never seen something like this quite. Refuse areas, mechanical equipment, screening on the rooftops, facades, outdoor seating, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, prohibition, balloons, festoons, inflatables, wind-propelled signs, and the like would continue to be nixed. Again, because they agreed you cannot control perpetuity, that somebody else may come in and I can't mention names, I'd be defaming them. Another place that doesn't have the same standards would come in. We have to protect the city along that. Number 16 is we thought when they were doing highway improvements that they would wipe out a small phone line. Turns out not to be the case. They would upset completely the balance, because burning any utility is unfortunate. It'd be nice if you could do it, but you can't do it. It's way too expensive to do so. So we're asking a strike on 16. And 17 is also struck because, again, it references and Mitzi used the word covenant. A covenant is a private agreement, so there was no need to mention this, because the covenant that exists that Federal Realty shares with the applicant is in fact private, and therefore mention of it is redundant. The Department of Public Works also had a memorandum on November 29th, where, for instance, we're noting that there was a movement missing at Cherry Lane Cherry Lane and Laurel Place about making a left turn from Cherry Lane westbound. That'll be corrected in this. So all this is for them to continue working with the Department of Public Works, because they've already submitted their geometrics for the reconstruction of the intersection of Laurel Place, and which I think, again, I know it sounds obsessed by this intersection, but it really will be extremely helpful in keeping people off of Route 1 and keeping the congestion levels down. Of course, they're going to flow to other places. We're going to keep a careful look, around the Green Hill Avenue, obviously the theaters. These are things we're going to have to watch very carefully, and I know we'll work with the applicant. But again, you have to remember, because the bizarre nature of the property line, but the parking deck that's there, as you remember from the BG&E substation, is not even on their property. It belongs to Federal Realty. Now, if Federal Realty does any reconstructive work or revitalization to their property, we have a number of issues that we'll deal with them at that time. And I have a fairly good idea that they're going to be along in the not too distant future. Having said all that, and again, this would include the adoption of number 13 and 15, would include that, and then as I verbally recommended to you this evening, that you adopt the reference points in 13, understanding that they can use the tenant manual for their signs, but the prohibition and the city rules on temporary signs remain. And that's really the only change that I'm aware of that we made today. Otherwise, the other things we mentioned here stand, and with the adoption of those recommended conditions, we recommend you consider the approval of the final plan for the revitalization and erection of the Laurel Town Center. Excuse me, the Town Center at Laurel. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Is that,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Both are for staff. The first is number 3, in terms of the amended staff recommendations. It went from within 1,560
The 6, I'm sorry, the 6 was a typo.
That's what I wrote. Was error, or, so it is 150?
Error. Correct.
So, okay.
And that was a function of the mayor and city council.
That
was a direction in their approval.
Just.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And then on number 6, the amendment, it's the way that it's broken down into the 2 sentences. The required off-site traffic improvements under the jurisdiction of the city shall be completed before the issuance for the first use and occupancy permit.
And that really should say commercial.
And is that about commercial?
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay. So we can add commercial there.
Please.
Okay. And then, so that separates the commercial. And then there were 2 improvements that we had talked about. One was the off-ramp on Route 1 onto Cherry Lane. Is that under the City of Laurel, or is that under the Maryland? Right, there were 2 that we talked about. One is the traffic light.
Oh, you mean the intersection of Laurel Place and Cherry Lane?
Yes.
That's exclusively a city.
So that one will be done.
That will be done before the first commercial space is occupied, right?
Okay. Thank you.
I have a strong feeling the grocery store wants it that way.
That's why I wanted to
Yeah.
check. So staff is okay to add the word, or would we need to, add the
We'd
word
appreciate if you
commercial?
would
or-
add the word
We would
commercial.
we would recommend that if, I'm sorry, I'm on number 6 in the amended. That first sentence, I was confused as to whether that was residential or commercial since it was unstated. So it would, when we get to motion, all required off-site traffic improvements under the jurisdiction of the City of Laurel shall be completed before the issuance of the first commercial use and occupancy permit. And I was clarifying that that one is going to be the ramp at the Route 1 Cherry Lane intersection, and then...
As we were told by the applicant, the roadway widening of Route 1 is largely a response to, again, because it's a net addition of residential units. They're the real generator, so until they're there, the state may not require them to move forward as yet.
Thank you. That was all my questions, Mr.
I just want to make
Chairman.
sure the second sentence there still says residential?
Correct, and that's referring to hooking up the traffic, the easiest way to say it is between Olive Garden and the grocery store.
Yeah, the easy, well, at least in my mind, I know that could be warped, but city improvements, Cherry Lane, state improvements, Route 1.
Excellent.
Got it.
Any other questions, comments, additions, corrections, deletions?
Mr. Chairman, if none of the commissioners, I would like a bit of clarification, or Carl, if you will,
Sure.
on condition number 2. The first sentence in condition 2 reads that the residential area of the development will be considered as a future phase. If within the 48 months that's prescribed here, the developer decides that it can't, for whatever reason, move forward with the residential development phase of that project, are there any
Safeguards.
safeguards,
Absolutely.
assurances?
Any
Could you
deviation for the
elaborate,
units
please?
in that parcel come directly back to the mayor and city council as a substantial change in the overlay. Automatically.
But it comes back before the mayor and city council, but if the developer says, can't build a residential because the commercial component's not taken off like we expected it to, so the financing's not there, or whatever the case may be, what recourse? I'll put it that way, because at least from where I sit on a council, we're looking at this as eventually a complete project with both phase 1 and phase 2 eventually completed. So what I don't want to see is there being a large portion of that site that is not developed because of whatever may come up.
I would theorize, just say theorize it, if that were the case in the housing, because right now, multifamily is boiling, it's hot. But in the future, chances are they would probably substitute more commercial use. There might be a retailer, there may be somebody else that did it, but even so, any retailer, even if it was a 10,000 square foot store, has to come back to the city council, because it's a marked departure from the original approval that you gave them during the concept plan. So you're in, the nice thing about overlays is you're in control.
Yeah.
I understand, but it's just a bit of an uneasiness that I'm feeling that.
Well, if I could add into what you're saying, it's like, and we have a classic example, I'll mention names, is, I should wait so long for Hawthorne Place to begin. It's just like this, so, which is the reason why the mayor and city council have considered sunset provisions, and future things, to give you back the approval, because it's like getting into I don't want to use any wedding references, but it's like making a long-term commitment where they have more of an out than you do, because their plan, continues forward until there's not a whole lot you can do except to wait them out. Because you cannot, what we were advised legally is that you cannot rescind an approval unless there was a specific sunset clause, which is why we put that insert in the residences in there to begin with.
This may be a question for the applicant, I'm not sure, but to Councilman Small's point, which is what I think I had asked a couple times ago when they were here, was the residential area, as we look up there, is where the Montgomery Ward Express still stands. And so my initial concern when I saw that it was going to move to future site was, okay, is that going to stay? But I guess what I would ask is, if we go to the third page of this pack, is it my understanding that this space, to Councilman Small's point, will actually be green space until they do something? It's not, so to the city residents, it will appear as almost finished open space versus, can someone clarify that?
I can't speak for the applicant, but I would assume that if they did not keep it attractively, their retail tenants would kill them.
Okay.
That's an
You see the
assumption.
third one? I took,
You know
when
what
I
assume
saw,
does?
when
Is there a way of finding out?
I would ask them, but I'm sure there's I'm sure I had the opportunity to work for a retail developer for a little while, and if you want to see something massive that looks like the Gutenberg Bible, a retail lease for a store is that thick. And there's just nothing they don't miss. So I'm sure there's all kinds of clauses that are in those things about, competitors, just all kinds of things that are in those documents. But the applicant.
We have something to offer to this?
Yes, let me.
Here we go, listen up.
Let me add a couple things. The first priority was to get the retail done. And that is our main focus and our only focus at this point in time. Secondly, we have released a brokerage firm who is now marketing that residential site on our behalf. Greenberg Gibbons does not build residential units, so when we do town centers, we get in business with major multifamily developers who come in to do that. We are marketing that aspect of the project. In the meantime, everything will be leveled, okay? Everything's gone. The Montgomery Ward site, everything's gone. As you also know, we're doing a lot of crushing and reproducing a lot of product on site, which will go over into that corner, which will ultimately be stabilized and will be grass. Okay. And it will remain grass until we find a residential unit suitable to us. I would also add as a third point, so that you know, what's critical to our tenants is that we have a residential component on site. Our grocer, is coming here on the basis there's going to be X hundred of residential units sitting on the property, which is their base of coming in and out every day. So it's a very critical part of the project. And the 48-month provision does not bother us, and because again, the only thing that would prevent you from going forward is a complete collapse of the housing market, and that will be, as it always has been in the history of housing, will be some sporadic timeline where it will come back, and then you'll be able to put the housing there. But we don't anticipate that. It's our intent now to go market that. We're in the middle of, as you know, if you've driven past the center, the sides are coming down pretty dramatically on the 4th Street side. The building's coming down. We're moving as quickly as possible with this project.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, and I don't want to beat this dead horse any more than necessary, but again, I just want to make sure I'm clear in understanding that part of the agreement arrangement for the grocery store is that there will be, at some point in time, a residential component on the site that will obviously, hopefully, shop there at the grocery store. So I presume then that that's part of the attraction for the grocery store to come to the site.
Most definitely is part of the attraction.
All right. Thank you.
That provision is typically not in a commercial lease.
No.
Yeah.
Correct.
What was your comment?
I was just clarifying that that provision, that it had that component is
Oh.
not part of a commercial lease.
Okay.
However, when we market this,
Mhm.
they see a site plan with residential on it. It's to them, they know.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
I just want to make sure I heard correctly. So when I look at this corner of the property, Mr. DePietro, it will be grass until somebody decides to build a building there.
Well, it will be turned into grass as we finish the entire development.
Right, I understand, but-
Stabilize the area, and then will become a grassed area, unless Greenberg Gibbons finds a residential developer who all of a sudden comes in, makes an attractive deal, and then phase 2 may be here next year.
Okay, got it, got you. Thank you, Mr. DePietro. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more discussion? Is there any person in the public that has something to say regarding this project or like to be heard? Seems like it's no. Are we ready to make a decision and recommendations on voting?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to, this is going to be tricky here, let me see if I get this done. I'd like to make a motion on item number 12, final plan of revitalization overlay application number R01-1-2012, Town Center at Laurel, 14700, 14828 Baltimore Avenue, filed by the applicant Greenberg Gibbons Commercial, with the following provisions on an amended staff recommendation and conditions for the Town Center at Laurel, 12-11-12R, with the strikeouts and underlining as provided. It's undated at this time, but I'm sure staff will put a date on it when the chairman signs. I'd like to, on item number 6, add the word commercial after the completed before the issuance in the first sentence for the first commercial use and occupancy permit. And was there another, no, that was already your strikeout. So I think that's the only strikeouts we have. And I'd also like to, there is, 12. And there's a resolution, recommend approval to the city council on resolution number 1210-PC.
Well, I'm sorry, that's
Second.
not true.
Oh, that's not true?
You are the end body. This is it.
Oh, so there is no resolution?
No. No, there's a
Okay.
resolution because you are the final decider.
So I have to include the resolution in the motion.
Please.
And I'd like to include the
Make sure
resolution,
it's corrected according to your.
and corrected resolution number 12-10PC.
Second.
What does that do to 14? Anything?
Nope.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Did you
Mr.
second?
Wilson?
Okay.
Aye.
Mrs. Bettman?
Yes.
Mr. Welford?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Chairman Williford?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a technical provision. The provision of the tenant manual was included in the amendment, so I didn't need to do that.
13, 15, yes.
Okay.
But we will clarify that in the resolution. It might even bear witness that it might be a specific reference in the resolution.
I appreciate the participation across the board, from those who started this deal to those who are winding it up and those who corrected it and fixed it.
It will not be done,
It's-
Mr.
it's-
Chairman, until
it's-
my butt is sitting in that theater with a thing of popcorn.
It's not that big.
My butt or the popcorn?
I ain't gonna touch that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your patience.
We have number 16.
We do.
Yeah, you got more work? There's no work? There's no...
Oh, West Side, yes. Item 16, who has that?
I do. Want to make that night, the end of the agenda pane.
Oh.
This may seem a bit unusual to you, but if you do remember,
There are no unusuals. Go ahead.
you remember the strip matter annexation, the annexation of the Prince George's County School Board.
Yes.
And you remember a lot of the exhibits that the strip matter property was badly affected by the state of Maryland acquiring land for the intersection and reconstruction of Conti Road interchange with I-95. Because of the amount of taking of land and the amount of taking of land for stormwater management and all the roadways in which, you've seen my little drawings of it looks like Los Angeles. It wound up that there can only be one access point to the combined properties today of Strip Matter Land LLC and the former Prince George's County School Board property. Now, Having said that, the strip matters are in the process of negotiating with State Highway Administration to basically, with some matter of compensation, receive the school board property. As such, the state wants to move forward and dedicate a roadway. Now, having said that, it sounds like we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I just wanted to, so you understood, this is on your, this is on your next agenda, but what the state wanted to do was to dedicate, there was only one access point to this property, and it has to be a big one for obvious reasons, public safety and otherwise. So the roadway comes in between Wilshire Estates and then arcs over into a traffic circle. And I can tell you that West Side, as the development is called today, includes a number of multifamily units, townhouse units. It includes a moderate-sized, medium-sized shopping center and a mid-rise hotel. So we're pretty happy with the caliber so far of negotiations. Having said that, that is in front of your docket next month as a conceptual plan for MXT development of the strip matter property and a rezoning, a traditional rezoning of the school board property, because as you remember, you can't change the zoning category more than 50%, and Prince George's County, for reasons which I'm not appreciative of, chose to let that property stay in the residential open space category when it knew. So, I mean, but that's another argument for another time. So, but the action in front of you this evening is the state has co-signed this and would like you to, even though the Mylar's still waiting for the state, but if you could consider the approval of the dedication as shown in your plats of West Side Boulevard, which will play into your further consideration of the development in January.
Mr. Chairman.
Everybody who's clear?
Well, I got a couple of questions.
Go ahead. Oh, I can't wait.
Can you describe for us the verb to dedicate? I just want to make sure I understand what we as a city body are doing.
Yeah, what you're doing is you're dedicating land to public use, to right of way, and the state is involved because it's the only way. They're actually, I won't get in because it's not public. You know, it's a land use transaction with strip matter land, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, the state has their own way of doing things. So, and they've negotiated because there is no other way into this property, because the natural ways into this property are going to be replaced by arterials that have denial of access. And basically, the really nice chunk of strip matter was destroyed for the ramps for Conti Road, which is all for the good, obviously, unless you want to get into this property. So what we're asking this evening is if you just dedicate the land to public use. That's what's basically in front of you.
So this is just bear with me. We're taking the land that's now privately held by some landowner.
No, it's actually owned by the state of Maryland.
It's owned by the state of Maryland. And we're dedicating it. Why doesn't the state dedicate it?
Because you dedicate land, the local jurisdiction dedicates land to public use that's going to be used within its own municipality.
Okay.
Or jurisdiction.
I got it.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's just a little off than a regular dedication. If you were dealing with a subdivision plat, this wouldn't be an issue, but the state wants to do it now because of the fact that it's involved in all this land use transaction things that's going on in that
So would you like
quadrant.
to add some clarification on the front end?
I'll be happy to. I think Carl has done a
You might
great
need to
job.
turn your
Yeah.
mic on, sir.
Is it not on?
Is the green light on? Push it towards you.
Yeah, it's on. The green light is on.
Okay.
Yeah. Edward Gibbs, the attorney for Strip Matter Land, with offices located in Largo. Let me just, if I could, just not to drag this out, but the Strip Matter property was 67 acres, and the State Highway Administration came in and said, we're going to take 22 or so acres of that land for the northeast quadrant of the Cloverleaf for the new interchange. And the effect of that taking, which occurred last January, was that the access to the Strip Matter property, which is already zoned MXT, was going to be taken away. And so the State Highway Administration had two choices. They could either provide an alternate access, or they could purchase the entire 67 acres. So what they chose to do was to provide an alternate access. So when the State Highway Administration negotiated its final settlement for the taking for the Conterra property, which involved a three-party agreement between the Conterra owners, the State Highway Administration, and Prince George's County. As part of that three-party agreement, the State Highway Administration got Prince George's County to convey the school board property, which is the rectangular piece, to the State Highway Administration. The State Highway Administration's intent, way back at that point in time, was to take that school board property and then to ask Strip Matters for part of the compensation it was due for the 22 acres being taken to accept a transfer acre for acre of the school board property. So it's a very complicated transaction which is yet to be, it's been conceptually negotiated and approved by the Attorney General's office and by my client. It is pending approval by the Board of Public Works, which we hope will happen in January. But as part of that process, you know, just giving the Strip Matters the Board of Education property in an acre for acre exchange was not enough. The State Highway Administration also had to provide an access. And so this dedication plat, you know, my clients determined where the most appropriate location would be for the access road. And so they actually, my clients actually designed what you see on that plat, but the State Highway Administration is actually going through this dedication process so that they can complete their obligations to provide a public right-of-way so that we can have access to get to the balance of the Strip Matter property. So that's literally what this plat is all about. And because the Board of Public Works has not yet approved everything, the State Highway Administration could not actually sign the plat. They signed the application. They're requesting you to approve this. And as soon as it gets approved by the Board of Public Works, which again we hope to be January, they will sign the plat. We will, you know, if you approve this tonight, the chairman of the Planning Commission would sign the plat, and then it would be recorded, and we would have a publicly dedicated roadway.
Thank you very much. Any further questions on that?
Don't ask me to repeat it.
Three quick things, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Number one, yeah, you are not, let me say what's not in front of you is you're not being asked or pressured in any way to comment on the MXT application for concept or for the rezoning of the school land. And then number three, I don't know if we put it in your packet or not, is the administration has been very mindful, even though it's not in the city, of this is a 4-lane boulevard, of the relationship of this with Wilshire Estates next door. So they have already done conceptual designs for a berm and buffer system to make sure that that property is protected, although they have outreach to them and been ignored. But, you know, we're still going to do the right thing. I just wanted to mention that.
Are we ready to make a recommendation?
Yes.
So opened.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the subject road dedication, street dedication, West Side Boulevard, West Side Development, filed by Strip Matter Land LLC, and include action on resolution number 12-14-PC.
I'll second.
Moved in second. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bettman?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Walford?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Chairman Williford?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Sounded normal.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
explanation, sir.
You do not obfuscate. Very good. Number 20, please. Text amendment application number 228, ordinance number 1756. Who that? Okay.
I have it. The text amendment is an item that you had tabled during the last meeting. There were 3 items that you asked to be addressed. The first, under section 20-2.8, paragraph A, the city solicitor added commercial use and occupancy permits to show that this is limited to commercial. It does not affect residential use and occupancy permits. Secondly, a case report documenting an investigation of illegal activities, striking an investigation of, so it will repeat, it will read a case report documenting illegal activities within the premise or premises parking lot. And then in paragraph B, the last three words, regulating property maintenance, is being struck. So it would be illegal activities, behavior or conduct in violation of federal or state law defining a felony or a misdemeanor or a municipal code, period. And I think that those are the only three items that you had addressed during the last meeting.
Any questions or comments?
I had one
Go
question.
ahead.
I mean, clearly this is being done because there's some problems that exist. How do we notify businesses of the changes that we're likely to approve?
This is the text amendment notification.
Just,
I'm assuming there will be a press release by the administration.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we want to make sure the business community knows because yeah, there obviously is a reason for this. But the general public is crying out for it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say thank you. This clears up every question that I had from the last meeting. Thank you.
good.
Any other comments? Do we need to vote on something right now? Has been moved and seconded?
Nope.
I'm entertaining a motion. My head is spinning.
I will, Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion to approve text amendment application number 228, ordinance number 1756, to amend the land development subdivision Article 1 zoning, Division 2 administration and enforcement of the Laurel Code, and provide a recommendation to the mayor and city council as annotated in the staff report, or I guess it's the actual ordinance here. And yeah, that's the recommendation.
Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Kish.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Mr. Walford?
Yes.
Mrs. Bettman?
Yes.
Chairman Williford?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Is there any other business that goes before this body this evening? Sure? Meeting is adjourned. Don't move, don't move. Thank you. Thank you for the details. Felt like being in a gunfight without a bullet in the chamber.
We made up for the last
but
time.
no, oh my God.
We were done at 20 minutes last
What,
night.
what? I'm ready to abandon ship. This is crazy. How did we get to this? How did we get to this coming up with the allegations? We knew about that from before. But I was waiting for something to be said from this, and you came through. Thank you very much. But then it goes back to you two knew more than anybody else sitting here.